Congratulations, you made it through week 1. Or you didn't. We're just gonna keep going. That. Yeah. Yeah, roll it. Keep going. All right, so what do we know about functions? Well, we focused on expressions mostly last week, though functions could be part of expressions, but we learned a couple of generalizable rules about functions themselves in Python. First, the functions start by declaring the name of the function that we want to use, something like input or print. They're followed by a set of parentheses that, as we saw on the Jupyter, automatically fill themselves in. So those are at least the two syntax things that we already know about functions. Now, last week we saw them filled with, at least those parentheses, filled with objects, filled with items, filled with strings. Today we're not going to look at parentheses that are filled with anything. We're just going to focus more on the bare bones of what makes a function by writing our own, and looking at, again, the difference between a productive and a non-productive function. This week I'm going to use the Jupyter to model the code that I want to show you. I'm not just going to throw it on the screen in a text box. This invites you to open up your Jupyter if you haven't already. You should pause the video now, go ahead and open it up. But when you do, you should be able to follow along and reproduce the code that I put on my screen to simulate what I'm doing to get a better understanding. But in terms of understanding and familiarity, we've already seen a couple of things with functions, as I was talking about just a little bit ago. The non-productive and productive functions. I'm going to start with the non-productive one that we know very well, print. If I want to print anything to the screen, I'm just going to print a string that says meow to the screen. I can type whatever I want in between the parentheses in quotes, and I can get that string to print to the screen. However, we can do productive things, such as take user input. So response gets the value of whatever I put into the screen, and I'm going to say, what does the cat say? And here I'm going to add, well, meow, because that's what the cat says. And if I want to print the value of response, I can print the variable directly. So we've seen this before, just productive and non-productive functions. But what we haven't seen before is actually what a function looks like and what really makes it productive versus non-productive. I'm going to start off with a non-productive function, which is another version of meow here. And I'm going to stop along the way to highlight some key points. The first key point that I'm going to highlight is that when I start a function, I need to use a new keyword. You may have seen it if you looked in my reserved words table. However, I need to type def or def to start a function. That is short for define. It allows me to tell Python that I'm starting a function, and the next thing that I need to do is provide it a name. So similar to variables, I have to name my function something. I'm going to call it meow, and you notice that the color coding turns it blue because it knows that it is a function title. So again, you know you're on the right path. The next thing I have to finish it off with is a set of parentheses, which will accept parameters in a future video. I'm not going to talk about parameters in this video, but in the next part I will. And we can look at it then. But every function has to have at least some parentheses there for parameters, just in case there are any. There aren't any here, because all I'm going to be doing is printing the word meow. But I have to finish my function with a colon. Now this only finishes the function declaration. And this declaration statement contains 3 parts. The define keyword, the meow title with parameters, if there are any, and this colon. And the colon is an important feature that we're going to see a couple times over, but what it really does is it allows us to do what's called declaring membership. Because when I hit enter, Jupyter automatically indents the next line. And indentation is another important syntax feature of Python. Again, it allows us to say what is actually the code that should belong to the meow function. Now here, only one line is going to exist. It's non-productive. It's just a print function. I'm going to say, all right, anytime I call meow, I just want to print the word meow to the screen. And when I hit enter, it's going to assume I have another instruction. I don't, so I'm just going to hit enter again and backspace back to the left margin. When I do that, I am essentially ending and exiting the function. And I'm able to use it in my code. I go back to the left margin and I'm back to my code. I'm going to type meow and 2 parentheses, just like I do with print, just like I do with input, in order to get a function call set up. And the function call runs the function at the minute that it exists or appears in the code. So if I shift enter now, I should get a meow to print to the screen. And I do. So this is what constitutes a non-productive function. We're not really returning a value. We're not really dealing with a value. There's no response gets the value of, there's no equal sign assignment operator. There's nothing that would indicate that I actually am giving a value back. I'm just putting something on the screen. However, a productive version of this might look something like this. Start with the def keyword, as I always have to, and I'm going to start with meow. I'm going to name it meow. I'm overwriting the previous function. So just like variables, if I write a function with the same name in the same program, it's going to take the latest version of it. No parameters and a colon, again, to end that function declaration. And then I am going to return a string meow, which this is what makes a productive function. I have this thing called the return keyword, which essentially sends back to where I call the function. So just like above, I called the function here and it printed meow. Instead of printing meow, it's just going to return the value. So I need to catch it. So if I have message gets the value of meow, and then I print message, I get the same thing. So I get the meow back. But again, the difference between productive and non-productive functions is that productive functions have a return keyword and send something back to the point in the program where the actual function was called. And again, that meow, the second one that I'm highlighting on the screen right now, that is a function call. So two pieces here: the function definition or declaration, the def keyword, the title, the parameters, the colon, and then the instructions that follow. And whether or not it contains a return keyword or sends anything back makes it productive or not productive. And believe it or not, that is really the basics for what a function looks like. Now, of course, it can and will get more complicated than that. But all you really need to remember to take away from this video are a few things. First of all, a function needs to be declared. And in order to declare a function, we need to start with the def keyword, followed by the name of the function, parentheses to accommodate any parameters that we may supply, again, later video, and a colon to indicate that what follows should be a member of whatever the function that we have is. The other thing you need to remember, of course, is that there's a difference between productive and non-productive functions, and that difference being whether or not the function itself returns anything or sends something back. So of course, we're going to complicate it a little bit in videos 2 and 3 this week. But again, all you need to know about functions are those basic things. So if you want to scroll back in the video and you want to pause it and take note of those, that's going to help you as we progress through functions this week.